Hello, and welcome to this mental health report. This mental health report is being brought to you by the Pan American Health Organization, the Ministry of Health and Social Development, and the BVI Health Services Authority. We have on the program today Dr. June Samuel. She's a psychiatrist with BVI HSA, and we're here to talk about the mental health and psychosocial support project. Today, our topic is emergency response and crisis response. Welcome to the program, Dr. Samuel.
Thank you, Natasha. It's great to be here.
Wonderful having you back. It's always great to have you on the show. We want to, as we continue to build our resilience and to build mental capacity, we want to talk about the complexities of responding in an emergency situation or a crisis versus, any other mental health issues. Is there a difference in response?
So there is a difference in response. When you have a crisis or an emergency, our stress response gets activated. So persons are in a fight or flight mode, which means that they themselves, the person experiencing the crisis, is going to be in a situation where they are trying to problem solve, trying to think through, trying to deal with the crisis. So they will be having like an acute stress response. And depending on how significant the event was for the individuals, you can see persons in various stages of that stress response, right? And therefore, when you're responding to somebody in crisis or emergency, it would be important to understand where that individual is so that you would know how to respond to them.
I know we we have so much to talk about. We have the hurricanes of 2017, and we have this pandemic that we're currently in that could basically fit that criteria. Talk to us a bit about collectively, I don't know if you want to break it up, the hurricanes and the pandemic, and talk about the support or the impact that has had on the psyches and the mental wellness of persons.
So both of those events came with a lot of changes. And the changes involved losses of some sort. So with the hurricanes, well, everybody knows, with the hurricanes, we lost infrastructure, we lost loved ones, we lost our way of life because we had to, live without electricity for 6 months, and we had to stand in lines to get basic supplies. And so for some of us, especially, the younger persons who never had that type of experience, they were near death experiences that a lot of person had. So that kind of acute change brings with it a sense of insecurity because now you're uncertain of what would happen next, and that would be a part of the reason why the upcoming hurricane season, and I think hurricane seasons for a while to come, will cause quite a lot of nervousness among the population, especially if you experience those hurricanes. Now with the pandemic, in a different way, it was the same sort of themes, right? We had to change how we live in a culture. So in a culture that's used to being interactive and expressive and hugging and shaking hands, you have funerals. Is everybody at the funeral? Those the types of things that we know as normal in our culture. COVID, the pandemic, took away a lot of that from us, okay? And during the acute stages of the pandemic, having to be in lockdown, so you're in isolation, not seeing anybody. Some of us, had to be in homes with persons that we don't normally spend more than 3 hours with at a time. Parents have to be in the same home with their children, and you don't normally have that experience. So it's losses and forces you to live in a different way, to think differently about your lives. And because of that creates stress for us. Anything that brings change for us, and especially if it is acute sudden change, that will create stress for us, and therefore affect the way that we may be responding to the situation.
So, Dr. Samuel, based on 2017 and how we responded, what did we learn from that response that will help us to increase our capacity just in case anything happens in the future?
All right. So that whole experience of 2017 was a learning experience in many ways. So we could talk about what we learned in terms of how we have to build our infrastructure, right, and the changes that we've had to make in terms of the requirements for our buildings, because now we know, because of climate change, we can have a category 5 hurricane. We never thought about that before, right? But the other thing that it did is that we had a situation that devastated our economy, right? And affected, as a part of the economy, people were affected, okay? And there isn't one person who can tell me that they were not affected. So what we had is a whole population that had been exposed to a disaster, okay, that then needed some sort of intervention or crisis response. What did we learn? We didn't really plan for a situation where everybody would be affected. We had excellent plans. And I know that because I've worked with DDM, I've worked with Charlene when she was there. So we had great plans, right? But the plans always took into account that, either the effects of the disaster would be short-lived, or it may be just one particular part of our population that was affected. And even if you think back to our experiences of hurricanes here, we generally would have bounced back fairly quickly, right? So what we learned, the major lesson, was about the need for capacity building for individuals on the ground who can provide crisis support, who could provide psychological first aid. There's only one Dr. Samuel, there's only one Dr. Rubain, right? There's one Dr. Turno. And certainly we can't be everything to everyone, especially if we've been affected as well. Okay, and hence that's a part of the reason for this psychosocial support project, because what we've done is essentially broaden the base of the pyramid. So we've created more persons on the ground who understand what psychological first aid is, because when you're in crisis, after you've had a trauma, you need psychological first aid. You don't need counseling and therapy at that point. Okay, you need someone who can be there with you, who can help you to problem solve, help you to understand where you're at, what your needs are, and help to point you in the direction of meeting those needs. That's what you need in that immediate period. Okay, and so we've made sure we've trained more persons, and that's a process that has to continue, because psychological first aid can be delivered. It doesn't have to be delivered by a mental health professional. It can be, lay persons on the street, once they're interested, can be trained to work in crisis situations and deliver psychological first aid. So that was the greatest lesson.
Wonderful. So now, Dr. Samuel, if we were to be impacted tomorrow by another hurricane, how do you think we would fare in terms of our resilience and our mental stability as a people, as a territory?
Well, we started out being a resilient people. I think, the people in the BVI, we have been resilient. I mean, when you look at our history and where we came from as a people and how we built the economy and you built up the BVI, we are resilient people. We survived that. So all of these various disasters and experiences that we go through help to make us more resilient, right? And I think now, because of the information that has been shared, persons are more aware now of what are the things that they need to do. Now, we may not be practicing it, and that's the key. So the key is, whatever we say to you that you should be practicing and doing, you have to do it. Because when you get into a crisis, that's not the time to be trying to learn the skill. You want the skill to be like second nature, and then you apply it so that you can help to manage your stress response during a crisis.
Wonderful. Once again, we're here bringing you the Mental Health Report. It's part of the Mental Health and Psychosocial Support Project that's being sponsored by the Pan American Health Organization, the BVI Health Services Authority, and the Ministry of Health and Social Development. We had with us today psychiatrist Dr. June Samuel talking about crisis response and emergency response. Thank you once again, Dr. Samuel, for coming on the program. Final thoughts.
So listen to the information. Okay, crises can happen at any point in time. It doesn't take hurricane season to bring a crisis. Okay, because as a part of our everyday lives, we may experience situations that are a crisis to us. And the tools that we talk about, all of the activities that you hear on the radio, all of the tips, you can use them every single day. And by using them every single day, you're able to manage your stress response during any crisis.
Thank you again, Dr. Samuel, for coming on the program today. I've been your host, Natasha Letsom. Thank you for tuning in.